place we don't have a
close friend.
parentheses.
You have to have objectives. But this is in your section.
That one changes in my section, right?
Huh?
That one changes in my section or not?
Which one?
The
Yeah, that's in your section. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so you know
So I
that.
know about it.
I was thinking there was something I wanted to be sure Rich noticed, but I don't see it. So
I did change the ribbons. Remember I told you
yeah, I didn't know if
that changed from new attendee to new participant. And then that is new instead of a ribbon, it's a sticker. So small change, but at least it's accurate.
I did note you have host, and also I see global host.
Yes.
Only reason why I noticed that was Joe was in that talk, and he was like, "Call me God, I'm the host." And so I saw somebody with the global host one, and I said, "There's global guys."
You can become one too.
That's the only reason I noticed. Anyway,
So, they're coming. Oh, thank you, Miriam. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. Hey, Karen, just an FYI that this person is here. Do you know who that is? I know who that is. No? I don't remember which meeting it was, but
oh yeah,
just
Is that the name?
FYI.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Do you want me to go close that door?
Yes, I think I'm gonna go ahead and start. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome you to the new participants overview. This will hopefully provide you sort of a context and some information to get started in the IETF. I am Karen O'Donoghue. I'm one of the co-coordinators of the Education and Outreach Directorate for the IETF. Um, I'm a longtime participant in the IETF, and I've been a working group chair in both the internet area and also the security area. Um, and I will have two other um, people presenting as well. Um, Michelle Cotton. Michelle is part of the Secretariat. She's also the one who's been sending you all of the emails that you've gotten, and she's the new participant ambassador. Um, and then sitting on the floor is Rich Sauls, uh, and he is a longtime participant, security expert in the IETF as well. So I'm going to introduce the three of us. And with that, um, this is an overview of our presentation for you. The slides are online. A little bit later, we'll talk about Data Tracker. But if you go to the Data Tracker, there'll be a button that says Download the Materials, and that's a copy of these slides. Um, expectations for this presentation. Obviously, we can't cover everything about the IETF in an hour, so what we really tried to focus on is the information that will help you be effective getting started this week. So in your first few IETFs, what's the information that you need to know? High-level overview of our leadership resources, tools, things like that. And then specifically parts of the IETF this week that might be of interest to you. It does not include the history of the IETF. There are some online tutorials that were done by Scott Bradner a while ago. They're a bit dated, but they do have a lot of the early history of the IETF in them. How to write a standard, and many other things. You can, we'll talk a little bit more later about tools and other places you can go for additional information. With that, this is the IETF Notewell. It is the set of processes and rules by which we operate. We are an open standards organization, so this includes things like intellectual property. You will have agreed to this when you signed up to attend the IETF. And also, you will see it in all of the meetings as a reminder that this is the process by which we operate. Also included in the Notewell are a number of documents that give you our standard process, our anti-harassment procedures, our code of conduct, patents and participation, and all of those kinds of things. One of the very important things about this is tracking attendance. And so the every meeting that you go into, every session that you arrive in, if you're a remote participant and you're sitting at home, as soon as you log into the session, you're already attended. But for here, for all of the physical sessions, and I see somebody that was doing it just as he walks in the door right there, you need to scan the QR code. So if you have not taken your phone and scanned the QR code here, that is what will register you as a participant in this session. And so you should do that for every session that you walk into. Also, how to ask a question in a session. You can use the tool Meet Echo is available both as a light client and then also as a laptop client. So in the room, you can join either way. And after this session, Michelle is going to run a Meet Echo tutorial to help you get started with Meet Echo. But the key here is to to raise your hand. You can either join the queue, see that if you look there at the bottom of the Meet Echo, if you're using the laptop tool, or there's a similar function in the light client on your phone. So with that, the next thing that's a logistics type of activity is lanyards, pins, and buttons. And so we do have two types. We have two colors of lanyards. If you would prefer not to be photographed in large group settings, you've already agreed to being photographed as part of signing up for the meeting. However, you can wear a red lanyard to indicate that you don't want to be photographed in a more close-up setting. So avoid taking my picture. You can also use pins if you want to indicate that you are not comfortable with close contact. I'm sure when you registered, you saw that the Secretariat also provides masks and things like that. If you're not feeling well, we do have remote the Meet Echo tool is available, and you can stay in your hotel room and participate from there. And finally, this is a global community. If you speak other languages, feel free to pick up a button indicating the languages that you speak, and that way others that speak that language can identify you appropriately. So that's the basics, the basic participation part. So here we're going to give a quick overview of the IETF. First of all, the mission of the IETF is basically to make the internet work better, and you make it work better by producing quality standards that are developed and deployed. The IETF is a completely open organization. Anyone can participate, and all of the work product of the IETF is open and available for free. Contributions are judged on technical merits, and success is whether or not the document is ultimately deployed. So the IETF is, at the end of the day, a standards development organization. It is self-selected participants in the sense that there's no formal membership, you don't pay dues, you don't have to belong to a specific company or a country in order to participate. You do participate as individuals. Now, obviously, your employer is paying your way, and there is an understanding that you represent represent your organization's positions, but it's also expected that you, at the end of the day, are an individual participating. And it's driven by market-based adoption, so we can't impose any standards or solutions. It's bottom up. Decisions are made by rough consensus and not by votes. We do not take formal votes in the IETF. And there's no booths or sales promotions or other types of sales-related activities. You won't find that here. This is not a trade show type of conference. An often, question for everybody is, how is the IETF funded? There's a variety of sources that support the IETF in order to make sure that the work remains open and accessible and available. There are the registration fees for the meeting. That funds, obviously, the facility and the meeting itself. It also begins to fund some of the activities that are year-round. There's individual and individual donations to the IETF. There's also corporate contributions, and you'll see a number of signs around about the various different categories of sponsorship. And then finally, the Internet Society. The IETF is organized as a disregarded entity of the Internet Society, and it has provided a long-term agreement. And it's currently providing over 50% of the funding for the IETF. So it's not a pay-to-play standards organization, and there's no way to really buy a formal role. So even as a host or a sponsor, it does not give you additional privileges. You're supporting the overall mission of the organization. So the big picture. The IETF has the Internet Engineering Task Force, which does the engineering work of the IETF. And then there's the Internet Research Task Force, the IRTF. And so those are two related bodies, but they're not exactly the same. The IESG is organized into a number of areas, and we'll talk about those areas in a minute. So things like security and internet or management and operations, those are the different areas of the working group of the IETF. And each one of those has a number of working groups in it. The IESG is the management body of the IETF. And so in the case of the various areas, the working group areas, there are 2 or maybe 3 area directors that manage that body of work. So I know, for example, the security area has two area directors, and each one of those area directors is responsible for a subset of the work of that. And then the overall IESG manages the IETF technical product. The IRTF is made up of a number of research groups. And there is a steering group associated with that as well. In addition to the research work of the organization and the engineering work of the organization, you have the IAB, which is the Internet Architecture Board. The Internet Architecture Board manages all of the liaisons between the IETF community and the external organizations like IEEE, ITU, that kind of thing. The IAB also looks at the higher level architecture issues across areas. The IETF LLC is the body that does the administration of the IETF, so it signs the contracts and does the business of the IETF. Associated with that are two organizations that help with the product of the IETF, and that's the RFC editor, which manages the publication of all the documents once they've been produced by the IRTF or the IETF, and then also IANA, which is the Internet, um, wow, assigned assigned names and numbers. Just went right out of my head. Been doing this too long. So that one manages all of the protocol port numbers and things like that. So if you're developing a port and if you're developing a protocol and you need a port number or some sort of number associated with that for standardization purposes, then you would go through IANA and they would handle all of that. So as I mentioned, the IETF has a number of areas, and this changes over time. And in fact, there's been a relatively recent change here, but it's looking at, organizing the groups of current work that's in the IETF. So there's the applications in real time area. There's the web and internet transport area, the WIT area. That's the new one that was created. There's routing, which obviously handles BGP and those types of things. The internet area, which handles all of the IPv4 and IPv6 protocols and also things related to that, DNS, DHCP, and time synchronization, the NTP protocol. Operations and management handles the network management protocols. It also addresses the operational types of issues. So like, for example, there's a V6 operations working group that talks about issues associated with operating V6 networks. That is not in the internet area, it's in the operations area because it's, if it's changes to the protocol, that goes back to, the protocol working group in the INT area. But if it's a operational type guidance and those kinds of things, comes out of the operations area. The security area, in addition to reviewing all of the protocols that come out of the IETF for security considerations, there's a number of security working groups that, things like TLS and OAuth and those kinds of things. And then there's a general area, and the general area covers processes associated with the IETF and the general activities that are don't fit into a technical area. So things like if we decide to change the requirements for how we select a venue, that kind of thing would go through the general area. All of the work that went into evolving to the current administrative structure of the IETF, all of those working groups were done in there. Also, I mentioned that there were each area has 2 or 3 area directors. The one exception to that is the general area. The general area has one area director responsible for that, and that is also the chair of the IETF. I always worry when the network operations team comes into the room and then leaves, so hopefully there's nothing wrong. So early on, I mentioned that the IETF model is based on consensus and not on voting, and then you need to look at how do you define consensus. And there was an RFC written on that, RFC 7282. One of the early sayings of the IETF is that we reject kings, presidents, and voting, and we believe in rough consensus and running code. At the high level, that sounds relatively easy. Rough consensus is when all of the issues have been addressed, not necessarily accommodated, but they have been addressed, and that all of the dissenting opinions have been heard, but they don't block the forward progress. So at some point, if you have, a larger group of people that think this is ready to go, and you have one or two people that still think there's additional work to be done at some point, you need to say there's consensus to move this forward. There's a number of ways to measure consensus. It's still not voting. You can use Meet Echo polls. You can do hand raising. Historically, people have done humming. That's not done quite as much anymore with the merging of the online and the in person. Um, but it's generally a rough measurement, and whoever's the chair of the session is responsible for measuring that assessment, making that assessment, and documenting it going forward. Also, because we are a fully online community, that consensus needs to take into account the remote community. So often you will hear in a working group, let's take the poll of the room, and then they'll take the question back to the mailing list and ask the mailing list. So you have one more chance to express any opinions that you have. So the bottom line is all of the work in the IETF is done in working groups. So how do you join a working group, and how do you contribute to existing work? A little bit later, we'll talk about bringing new work into the IETF, but this is how do you go into an existing working group. The most important tool that you're going to use in the IETF is the data tracker, because that gives you access to all of the product of the IETF. So you will, every working group has its own set of pages in the data tracker. And from that, you can get all of the information associated with that working group. You can look across when you find the working group, like for example, the example here is DNS operations. You can see a set of blue tabs across the top. The About tab is going to tell you about who the current chairs are, who the responsible area director is, any additional resources like a GitHub repo or those kinds of things that it would have. The next tab over is documents, and that's going to give you all of the current documents that are being worked on, all of the published RFCs that have been completed by that working group, and any individual submissions associated with that working group. And then there's also, it gives you a way to easily contact the chairs if you have a question for them. There's also a tab over there that talks about the list archive, so you can go and find all of the previous email that's been sent to the mailing list associated with that working group. So the next thing is, how do you start new work in the IETF? And there's a lot of information. We're continually improving the web pages associated with the IETF. So if you have any questions, feel free to point out places where you think the information is not adequate. But new work is basically a contribution-driven process. So it's not that a plan of work is defined in advance and people contribute to an existing body of work. Obviously, there are things that we know we need to do, but a lot of the contributions on how to fix known problems or things that have identified new problems and solutions associated with them come from individual submissions. So basically, a participant or a group of participants identify a problem that needs to be solved, and it fits within the scope of the IETF, and then aligns with our architectural principles of the IETF. If you bring, or architectural principles of the internet, and it's well defined and understood enough that it's an engineering problem and not a research topic. The research work that goes on in the IRTF is much more open-ended, so you can you have the opportunity to explore more topics, but it's expected that if something is in the IETF or the engineering portion, the community knows enough about how to solve the problem that it's ready to move forward. There are a couple of exceptions to that, and exactly like the CFRG would be one. The Crypto Forum Research Group is an example of that, where there's a lot more cross activity between the IETF and the IRTF associated with cryptography. And then the final thing that you need is a group of people that are willing to do the work. So, if you have a problem that needs solving, but there's nobody that's willing to work with you to solve the problem, then that's not always the best solution. we get obviously thousands of ideas every year. Um, so this is your basic steps. I've already covered some of these, but the key one here is, is it within scope? And you've documented your idea. Then the key piece here is you need to socialize your idea and find other participants or other collaborators to work with. Um, and that is one of the most important things to be successful in bringing new work to the IETF is finding the right set of people to collaborate with um, to help move this forward. And then there's a process for those ideas. Michelle is going to mention it later, but there is going to be later this week. The Internet Architecture Board is also interested in facilitating new work coming to the IETF, and they will be holding like a help desk where you can stop by and talk to them about new work and what your ideas might be. Also, they'll talk a little bit later about hot RFC, and part of the idea there is it fits right into that socialize your idea. Hot RFC is a way for people that have new ideas to come and present their idea and hopefully identify other people that are interested in that idea so that they can go off and collaborate further until it's ready to become a submission of some sort. So hot RFC is an excellent opportunity to help build that set of people that are interested in your idea. There's a whole link to a set of information on how to bring new work in, and I encourage you to look at that. And as a reminder, the slides are online if you would like those. I think that brings me to the end of the session, my part. So Rich is next.
Okay. Where do I click on that? Yes. Okay. So going to talk about what an IETF meeting week is like. We meet 3 times a year face to face. We also do lots of work on mailing lists, GitHub issues. Many groups are using GitHub and so on. But let's talk about what the week is like. Pardon me. I'll start to ramp up my enthusiasm because it's pretty fun and exciting. The bulk of the work is obviously, as Karen mentioned, we have working groups. That is an area of people or a group designed to focus on a particular set of tasks. There's a task list called a charter that says, oh, we're going to do, work on TLS, or oh, we're going to help plan migrations between IPv4 and IPv6, or we're going to figure out how to synchronize time across the internet using a protocol called NTP, and how to figure out if somebody is lying to us about what the time is, because that has security implications. There are currently about 130, 122, surprised I know that number, working groups within the IETF, and they will not all be meeting this week. Probably 70 to 80 of them are meeting, and so on. There's also a thing called birds of a feather sessions, from the phrase birds of a feather flock together. There are a couple, and they are formally scheduled and listed in the agenda. I have a tab on my browser and on my phone open to what the agenda is, so I can always look and see. And that's, for example, there is I forget what one of the bosses, but anyhow, it's for people to get together to discuss, to see if this is a problem related to the new work Karen was just mentioning, see if this is a problem, see if this is a problem the IETF could solve, and see if we can maybe come up with a sketch about what the working group should be doing. Related to the IETF is also the IRTF. They're focused more on research. So there is a group, for example, on what global access to the internet for everybody, what that means to make things and what needs to be done to make things more globally accessible. Research on using formal methods, a branch of math and logic to help prove the protocols and the data structures do what they say, and so on. One of the functions of the IRTF is to get a list of papers, and people submit them, and pick out a couple and award prizes to them. And the prize is you get free admission and you get to come and present your paper to the IRTF. The meetings are all interchangeable. They're different. So working groups will act differently from IRTF sessions. I'll talk about that in a bit. But you can, your membership and your participation lets you go into either one. Just understand that the things are slightly different focus. There are area-wide sessions. So for example, the security area will meet or the management and operations group will meet. Again, all of these things are in the agenda. There are sometimes invited hosts, invited talks, the global sponsor. For example, Cisco is paying for a lot of this meeting, things like the snacks and the beverages and so on. They get to present a talk. The hackathon was yesterday and today. Um, the code sprint is like when you actually start to work on the content management system of the IETF called the data tracker. Social events, there is no formal social event this time. Instead, the Secretariat has organized a game night Tuesday night, I believe. All sorts of board games ranging from bananagrams to some deep science fiction thing that took multiple days to finish. And they all sort of gathered in the hallway during the sessions and finished them. But it's fun. Um, there are hot RFCs, that's later this evening after the opening reception, where you get 4 minutes to say, I'm doing this and I'd like volunteers to, if you're interested in this, come talk to me, and so on. And then there's side meetings and open time. Um, the side meetings, also called the hallway track, is one of the most popular events and reasons to come to the IETF, because you get to meet with colleagues and ask them informally, what have you been doing? What did you mean when you said this at the mic, and so on. Working group sessions. So I looked online just before I got up here to talk. Uh, this is exactly the kind of room that a working group session will be held in. In fact, there are 20 sessions, I think, being held in this over the next week. It's the biggest part. It's the main reason for coming. It's the justification for spending the money, to at least to my boss, and so on. They're focused on solving key issues. The sessions like this one are all streamed online via the Meet Echo tools. So there are, I think, about 800 people present online, in person is the term we use, present, and there are about another 300 or 400 who are virtual. The ones who know to be virtual are probably not watching this video stream right now, but they will be online. That's why you see cameras here and over there, so they can see the room and see the speaker and so on, as well as cameras showing what's on the slides. They can participate by doing online chats. They can also participate by raising their hand, just as we will have people do using the Meet Echo tool, raise the hand and speak into their headset or whatever. Um, we had been working on this stuff for a long time. Obviously, it got a big boost up during the early COVID years. Let me just see. Okay. One thing that's different about a working group compared to other standards organizations is there is very little introductory material. When someone comes up and is talking about a document that they've been working on, and the drafts, internet drafts as it's called, go through multiple revisions, they will say, they'll present slides and they'll be boring just like this, but no picture, because it tends to be just bullet lists, because nerds are good at bullet lists. Um, no logos, that would not be a good look on a working group slide. The ITF logo at the bottom. But they'll say, well, since we last met, these are the things that I've changed. And they will say, description of what the changes are. And then they will say, and here are the issues. Sometimes they're like actual GitHub issues, if you're familiar with that, or GitLab issues. Or there will be things, here's the things that the working group still thinks are open things. Let's talk about them. Should we require every name to be a full domain name, or can we have a abbreviated name? Things like that. So the important thing, the most important thing to participate in to be usefully participate in a working group session or to understand what is going on is to look at the documents beforehand. Karen mentioned the IETF is organized into areas, and then within the areas you can see the working groups that are there, and there's a pull down on the data tracker site that lists them by area. And then you can see on that page, you can then look and see, here's the documents they're working on. And on the agenda, you can see a little pop-up that says, here's the agenda and the slides and so on. So being able to review and read the documents before you come to a working group session will help you understand more about what's going on. Sometimes you just go to a session, you have no clue what it's about. I do that occasionally, and I hope to pick up, a sentence or two, if get some kind of understanding about what they're doing. But certainly not going to be able to stand up to the mic and speak. Birds of a feather, as I said, there's a couple this week. Um, it's before a working group is formed. They get a birds of a feather together. Sometimes it's a one-shot deal. Sometimes the the working group will say, um, pardon me. For example, we had a birds of a feather at the last session in Vancouver, and now there's an SSH maintenance group that is meeting for the first time as a working group this time. Sometimes it'll be like, there's not really enough, or the industry is not really interested in this. We had one a while ago on should we build internet file systems, and Dropbox and SIFs and so on like that. It's like, nah, there's already things out there in the market that people are using. Doesn't make sense for the IETF to get involved there. The IRTF research sessions, the IRTF is part of the IAB, so they fit underneath the general organizational structure that Karen discussed. They often meet here, and they are focused on, as I said, more long-term research projects. What is the privacy implications of protocols? How do we deal with that? What does it mean, and how can we enable global deployment of internet protocols all around the world? Of course, that's redundant, but so on. There is, as with true in most things in the IETF, there's an RFC for that. So that is a primer for it for people who are used to the IETF. The plenary is a Latin or Greek word that means everyone together. So there is nothing scheduled opposite the plenary. There are often invited lunch talks. The plenary is where the different organizational bodies give a brief update, and then they get up and they stand at it's in the ballroom, or whatever the biggest room is. The table seats like 24 people. And at one point, every area director will get up and sit at the table and take questions, general questions from the audience. The 5 people who are involved in the LLC corporation will say, here's our budget numbers, we need more money. The executive director will introduce himself or herself, Jay Daly, and talk about, where the organizational stands financially and so on. It's interesting to go to if you are interested in how a large nonprofit organization works and how we can, pardon me, have these meetings and have these mailing lists, hundreds of mailing lists all the time running, for free. You obviously have to pay a subscription, not a subscription, a membership fee, an attendance fee to cover some expenses, but it only covers, as Karen said, about half of them. And donations cover the rest of the stuff. Um, and it's also fairly mundane. One person famously stood up at the plenary meeting and said, "We don't have enough cookies during the breaks." And people, applauded, and we got more cookies in the future. He spoke it very quickly. Side meetings are not a part, echo, right? Side meetings are not a formal part of the meeting. It's just we let people use the meeting space. There is a wiki page where people can just, edit the page and say, I'm having a side meeting. We've had side meetings on what it means to do the internet over satellites, not just local Earth satellites, but what does it mean to do TCP/IP to the moon or to Mars? We had a talk actually on someone who said, we can kind of do quick new protocol to Mars, and it might work the timing out. The timeouts might not actually affect us. There's often meetings of 3GPP network operators and so on. They are subject to the note well, which is a reminder of the things you agreed to when you registered for the meeting. Be nice to each other, be professional to each other. Don't lie about patents that you might have that would be impactful and so on. But it's not a formal endorsement. It's literally just a side meeting off to the side. The hackathon. the hackathon is cool. For a while, it's like grew really big, and there's a lot of people who come just for the hackathon. That's free. The just before we were meeting, they were getting their free lunch, outside there in the hallway. Um, and what they do is the IETF has learned, and I think a lot of this is due to the founder, Charles Hannum, no, Chuck Eckel, Charles Eckel, and Cisco, who said, we should actually get people together and start to prototype the specifications that we're doing, right? Because you try to write things down as clearly as you can in English. Not everybody that's not their native language for many people, but that's the official language of the IETF. We write things down in English, and then someone will come along and start to implement it, and they'll find a sentence that is completely ambiguous. And half the people will interpret it one way, half the people will interpret it another way. So one of the mantras of the IETF is rough consensus and running code. So at the hackathon, there's lots of code being written. A lot of people, for example, right now we're working on post-quantum certificates and post-quantum cryptography. Other people working on real-time video over the internet, and so on. So in the future, it's definitely an exciting thing. There is some remote participation, but you're sitting there in your home or your office with a video to this large conference room. It's worth taking a look just to peek in and see what the activities are. And there's often a board at the front that says table 1 is working on this, table 3 is working on this. I think at the end of the day today, they'll be presenting a summary of what they've done just before the welcome reception. Networking and social events. So there's lots of hallway conversation availability. In the past, the Secretariat has actually rented furniture so that there were more couches and places to sit in the hotels and conference centers. I don't know if they did it this time. It's pretty cool. The comfortable couches are the ones the Secretariat rents. The uncomfortable couches that are at awkward heights are usually the ones provided by the convention center. The picture on the right is from the social event in one of our Singapore meetings. We were in the National Aquarium of Singapore, eating snacks and sushi and things like that. Probably not a good at the aquarium, but anyhow. The Sisters is a group, a social organization or a group, informal group within the IETF. There are mailing lists and there are events that are listed in the agenda for people who, present themselves as women. Started a while ago to encourage more women to participate in the IETF. And now it has become, a fairly regular force within the IETF. They're involved with the outreach program that Karen co-chairs to show, here's some specific issues. We've also done the administration has done detailed studies on the experience of women within the IETF. It's not good, but we're trying to make it better. General meeting etiquette. So we're always trying to improve. Some groups have a reputation, you've been working with people for 20, 30 years, you see them a few times a year, more than you might see some of your family. And so you can tend to be short or curt with each other. And that can fall over into rudeness or be interpreted as rudeness. So we're trying to back away from some of that and say, obviously what counts is technical excellence. We don't want, you don't want someone to come up and say, well, I have this new IP protocol since IPv6 isn't working. Let's try IPv8 or 9 or 10. So that's going to be a non-starter. But if you've read the documents or you've thought about some of these issues before because of your work, and you can come up and say, have you considered this? That's very much respected and appreciated. When I joined Akamai, we had not been going to the IETF meetings very much. And it was kind of nice to see that people, oh, Akamai, yeah, we know what you do. Then that's, you guys know what you're doing more or less. So happy to see that. Online meeting etiquette. So technical questions, talking and listening. Certainly you can't learn when you're talking. It's harder. Good online meeting etiquette. We've sort of all learned how to do this thing in the post-COVID days, test your configuration, mute your audio unless you're speaking, perhaps turn off your video. depending on where the participants are. Some will be in bandwidth limited areas. Speak slowly and clearly. Same rules also happen, when you're coming up to the mic, because there could be a couple people, there could be half the meeting are remote, and they will not easily be able to understand you. Thought I went the wrong place. Did you move the mouse off the focus? Okay. All right. So that's my thing about my part about what the meeting has been like. Michelle will talk about some of the resources and the specific activities oriented towards newcomers. Thank you.
Rich, you usually do this part.
Oh, do I? Oh,
Yeah,
I
you
can do
do.
it.
You do.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Rich, you were trying to get out of your.
I'm
work
trying to get
camp.
out, trying to get out of my, yeah. I can't even blame jet lag because I was just in Edinburgh last week. Okay, the resources available. Thank you, Michelle. Do I match my shirt yet? Am I blushing? Okay, the IETF participants, they're passionate, uh, vocal. That could be loud, but they will talk a lot. That's the whole purpose of this week, is to talk to other people. Um, don't be shy to ask technical questions. If you're concerned that the thing you're wondering is like, oh, is this too basic to talk about? Catch somebody in the hall after the meeting and say, hey, when you said so and so, I didn't quite understand what you meant by that. People are happy to explain what they're doing, because when they're standing up in front of the group talking about the work they do, then you come up to them afterwards and ask them questions about what they're doing. It'll be obvious. They'll be pleased. Uh, Obviously, an informal dress code. Um, I happen to have a button-down shirt on, but that's only because the weather's not great. T-shirts, you'll see many people by the end of the week, many more people will be wearing the free T-shirt they got when they registered. People will bring fewer clothes knowing, oh, I'll just wear T-shirts. There are some people who will wear T-shirts that show, oh, IETF 20, IETF 10. I know a guy, Mike Johns, who wears IETF T-shirt number 1. Going back, 130, 120 meetings. So sometimes, it's like a humble brag, but anyhow, casual, dress what you are, just what you are comfortable with. Know, however, that you are going to be with an international audience. Okay, so obviously, um, yeah, be mature about it. Technical excellence is highly valued. Do your homework, like I mentioned, read the drafts, it helps. And there are a lot of close working relationships. You'll probably, with any luck, walk away or leave this meeting having made some contacts, exchanged email addresses, and correspond with people for the next 4 months until we meet again. The badges, dots, and ribbons. Everybody got a badge. We used to have inserts in plastic. We're trying to be more sustainable now. There are dots that go on the bags. You can see the names. Chair means they're a chair of a working group. The IESG is the collection of area directors. The IAB is as Karen mentioned, handles coordination with liaisons and sponsors the Internet Research Group. The LLC are the people, the corporation that like signs the contracts with the hotel and convention centers, right? Somebody a legal entity has to sign those things, and so on. There are also stick-on labels near where you registered. People will put on inside jokes. They'll list the name of the working group that they're chair of, pronouns, things like that. So they can show. There used to be. One thing I'll mention: the ombuds team. That's a group of 5 people. I'm not sure how many of them are here. I know at least one is. If you have a problem with harassment or impolite behavior or feeling threatened or concerned about that, find one of the ombuds team, or you can email ombudsteam@ietf.org or go to the registration desk and say you've got an issue you'd like to talk about. If you are comfortable doing it, you can find anybody with any dot on the thing, and they're in a leadership position in the organization, and they can help you. Click. There we go. Okay. A couple people are important. Jay Daly, Executive Director, he runs the day-to-day organization. You might have seen posts from him, the welcome post saying, here's some things, information to know. Here's a Google map with good lunch places. Here's the games night, Monday night and Tuesday night and so on. The Secretariat, Michelle is one of them. They're amazing. They keep all the logistics and the day-to-day stuff going. They can be seen, recognized by their blue shirts. On Friday, they'll wear tie-dye or Hawaiian shirts by tradition. They do that. It's the end of the week. They've been here since Wednesday, Thursday, setting things up. Um, Different sets of people. Karen is one of them, help run the internet at the IETF. And then another group paid people to set up all the AV stuff. Takes a lot to have 1,000 people interacting and doing things. The RFC editor, those are the people who turn the drafts once they're finally approved by the working group and the area directors and the overall IETF membership, turn them into formal documents, RFCs. IANA is the group, so they do a lot of copy editing. They'll take your documents, send it back to you. There's a particular stage humorously called Auth 48, which is the idea is the authors have 48 hours to make all the corrections. It's no, never works as 48 hours. It's aspirational. IANA, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, those are the people who, when somebody comes up with a new protocol, they assign the number. So like DNS is port 53, or there are often extensions in the protocol, such as TLS has a place to put your post-quantum signature algorithm. The IANA is the people who maintain the registry of that information. Harassment issues I mentioned briefly. We don't engage in harassment. We don't allow it. We don't condone it. If you have any problems, there is an anti-harassment policy. There's an ombuds team who will respond to that and deal with it. There is a working group setting up moderation policies for overall in the IETF called ModPod. IETF likes to pick English sounding names for the working groups, TLS, HTTP, ModPod, Whimsy, things like that. I used to think it was silly, but it is easy to remember what these things are now. So if you find anything, find an ombuds team, speak to someone at the registration desk, or find anybody with a dot on the thing and ask for help. So these are the ombuds team. I saw Pete. I assume Sophia's here, and there's
The two red, Pete.
oh, the two. Oh, look at that. It's been updated. So Pete and Siobhan are here. Pete's a nice guy. I don't know Siobhan. I'm sure he's a nice guy too. So anyhow, and there is an email address if you're seeing confirmation. Oh, that's cool. That's new. The knock. Karen works at the knock. They have, they do an amazing job. If you think what's involved in bringing a world-class, very fast, high-capacity network, setting it up in a place that's never had one before. You can see on the front two rows here, there's wireless access points, dealing with the IPv4, IPv6, NAT, what various host operating, your laptop operating systems do. They do a great job. If you have any issues at all and you say, I can't get, I can't get my thing working, email to the support at ietf.org. Or again, you can go to the registration area and there's usually a knock help center right there. This time it's even harder on them because they have two disparate organizations. They have the hotel and this convention center, so they've got like twice the work that they're doing. They do an amazing job. MeetEcho. MeetEcho is our custom tool. After this session, there will be a tutorial to talk about and show how to use MeetEcho. There is a lightweight app designed for your phone. And then for people mainly remote, there is a full browser-based audio video conferencing system. The data tracker, datatracker.ietf.org, lists every single working group, all of the organizations, all of the documents and so on are handled there. I'm running out of time. Mailing lists, yeah. I will, I think every working group has its own mailing list. There are other ones. And now I'm actually going to cut out and give Karen a bit of time. Zulip is the online messaging system. Texting systems like Slack or WebEx or other kinds of chat systems. Every working group has its own Zulip page. You can find it on the working group page, or it'll be integrated when you see the chat integrated in with Meet Echo. And now for real, I'm going to sit down.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Cotton again. Probably seen quite a few emails from me. I've actually met quite a few of you already, and if we haven't met, feel free to come and say hello to me at any time during the week. I'm sure you're feeling a little bit glazed over right now. Lots of information in a very short period of time. As Karen said, these slides are online. You can refer to them later, and if you have questions during the week, of course, please ask us. I'm just going to point out a couple things happening this week in case you didn't see it on the mailing list. Specifically for new participants, we're really trying to do a good job here at the IETF in welcoming new participants and making sure that you're getting the right information for you to have a successful IETF experience and also for your participation in the future. So of course we have this overview tutorial. And then immediately following this, we're going to have a Meet Echo test session. Meet Echo is used at every IETF meeting. It's a very important tool. And if you haven't used it before, it could be a little, it's not scary, it's just different. So we give you an opportunity to make sure it's working on your computer or your mobile phone. We point out buttons and features that are used, and so that when you do use it in your first session, it's a little bit more comfortable and easy to use. So we will be doing that immediately following the session in this room. Later this afternoon, we've got something called Quick Connections, which is we relate it mostly to like speed dating, where you have a bunch of tables with experienced IETFers, and then new participants will kind of move from table to table, and you get a chance to meet a lot of people in a very short period of time. We have a lot of the leadership that are going to be available at the Quick Connections. You can talk to area directors, IAB members, working group chairs. And it's just a really good opportunity as far as if you have a question of, where should I go this week? I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. They often can give you some pointers of where to go. So that's happening this afternoon on the level 3 foyer. On Monday night, we do have a new participant dinner. It's currently sold out. It's happening at the Spencer, but we are inquiring to see if we can add some space to it. So if you didn't get a chance to sign up and are interested, keep an eye on the mailing list to see if we can open up some more spots. And then on Thursday, we have a new participant social hour. Again, the leadership of the IETF is invited to that. And that's just a chance for you to let us know how your week went. There's some refreshments. You can talk to leadership to give them your feedback and say, I wish I had known this before coming, or, we're always trying to get feedback to improve how we do things at the IETF. So it's just a nice way to kind of wind down your week. All of this is on the agenda, locations and times. So always check the agenda to see what's happening and where, and also on the mailing list. Other additional activities that aren't necessarily new participant focus for all of the IETF. After Quick Connections tonight, we have the welcome reception, food and drinks, lots of people, and it's a good way to wrap up your Sunday. Karen and Rich mentioned Hot RFC. It's a fun session just to see what they're talking about. We've talked about the sisters groups for women participants or those who identify as non-binary. There are 2 events that we have for sisters. One is a networking event on Monday morning, and the other is a lunch on Thursday. Again, all on the agenda. And Rich covered the plenary that we have on Wednesday early evening. And if you're still not sure where to start after getting all this information, we have a blog post that talks about potential groups that might be interesting. If you haven't taken a look at that, that's something we produce new every IETF meeting with actually current events of what's going on. So take a look at that, browse the agenda. Area directors often have office hours during the week, and I will try to let you know on the mailing list. So for example, if the security area, if that's something you're interested in, you can go and chat with the security area directors, ask them really any questions. They usually will set aside like an hour of time, maybe during a break, where you can just go and have a chat, ask some questions. They'd love to chat with you. As far as connecting with other new participants, of course, we've got the mailing list. You are also free to send mail to the mailing list. In person, we have a new participant meetup spot. If you want to get together with other folks that are new to the ITF, go get some lunch, go get some dinner. I'll be posting where we're going to have that meetup spot here in the convention center. And then we mentioned the help desk. If you're wondering about RFCs, definitely stop by the RFC editor desk. If you have questions about protocol parameter registries, you want to stop at the IANA desk. And we just found out that the IAB will have a new work help desk on Tuesday from 3 to 4:30 on the ground level. So if you do have some new ideas percolating in your head and you want to just talk with the IAB about that, where to get started, definitely utilize those IAB new work help desk. Again, that's going to be on Tuesday afternoon, and it should be posted on the agenda. And of course, these lovely blue teal shirts, we are the Secretariat staff. If you have any questions about really anything, we are more than happy to help you or point you in the right direction. And I think we've covered all of that. Above all, we want you to have fun, meet new people, make new connections. If you have any questions, we are more than happy to help you out. So I wish you really a good week of learning. Stay hydrated, make sure you try to get some sleep, and yeah, welcome to the ITF.
We completely used all of our time, so we have no time for questions. We'll talk faster next time, or actually maybe say fewer things. But if you do have any questions, feel free to catch any of us, and we'll be starting the Meet Echo test session in about 2 minutes. Thank you. Yeah, we did. Keep saying we're going to shorten it. We never do.